Bernie Madoff, once respected as a financial genius, former NASDAQ chairman, and trusted friend to many, masterminded a $65 billion web of deception that would ultimately destroy lives, fortunes, and families.
Bernie Madoff has been arrested.
The man behind the mask. Bernard Lawrence Madoff appeared to be the epitome of Wall Street success. A pioneer who helped launch the NASDAQ stock exchange, Madoff commanded respect throughout the financial world. His reputation was sterling, former chairman of NASDAQ, philanthropist, family man. The most impressive thing about Bernie was his credibility, one former investor recalled. When he spoke, people listened. He wasn't flashy. He was conservative, cautious. Exactly what you'd want in someone handling your money. This calculated image of respectability was Madoff's most valuable asset. He cultivated an air of exclusivity around his investment fund. You couldn't simply walk in and invest. You needed an invitation. This artificial scarcity created demand. People literally begged to give him their money. The perfect setup. Imagine it's 2004, years before any scandal emerges. You're doing well financially with $1 million to invest. While considering options, a friend calls to say they can connect you with Bernie Madoff. The Bernie Madoff. You feel honored he would even consider you as a client. Everyone who's invested with him has made a fortune. A week later, Madoff offers to invest your $1 million, promising consistent monthly returns of about 1%, $10,000 every month. It's far better than any other investment opportunity you've explored. You feel blessed to be accepted by the financial wizard, so naturally you agree. 1 year later, your investment is performing exactly as promised. The monthly statements show your stock's doing great. Life couldn't be better, or so you think. The mechanics of deception. What was really happening behind the scenes? When you handed over that $1 million, Madoff never bought any stocks with it. He simply deposited the money into a bank account at Chase Manhattan Bank. Those detailed reports showing your earnings? Completely fabricated, just typed up in his office. Here's how the scheme worked. Unlike legitimate investment advisors who actually buy securities, Madoff simply didn't. When clients gave him money, instead of purchasing stocks or bonds, he deposited funds directly into his bank account. From this account, Madoff would pay returns to existing investors using money from new investors, the classic definition of a Ponzi scheme. But Madoff's operation was far from classic in its scale and sophistication. His firm produced elaborately falsified statements showing consistent 10 to 12% annual returns regardless of market conditions. When markets plunged, Madoff's returns remained steady. When markets soared, his returns remained steady. This impossible consistency should have raised red flags, but for many, it only reinforced their trust. The warning signs everyone missed. It's mathematically impossible, declared financial analyst Harry Markopolos, who spent nearly a decade trying to convince the Securities and Exchange Commission that Madoff was a fraud. His evidence was compelling and precise. The SEC investigated Madoff multiple times but failed to uncover the scheme. How could regulators miss a $65 billion fraud hiding in plain sight? Perhaps the most disturbing aspect of Madoff's scheme was how easily it could have been detected. The warning signs were there. Impossibly consistent returns, a secretive investment strategy, and a tiny accounting firm consisting of just 3 people auditing a $65 billion operation. The house of cards collapses. By 2008, Madoff's scheme had reached staggering proportions. On paper, his clients' accounts totaled nearly $65 billion, money that existed only in fabricated statements. The actual amount invested was around $20 billion, still making it the largest financial fraud in history. Then came the 2008 global financial crisis. As markets crashed, many investors needed cash and requested withdrawals. Suddenly, Madoff faced $7 billion in redemption requests, with only $200 million in the bank. The facade crumbled on December 10, 2008. Madoff confessed to his sons, Mark and Andrew, who worked in a separate, legitimate part of the family business. "It's all just one big lie," he told them. Basically, a giant Ponzi scheme. Shocked and devastated, They reported him to authorities the next day. The confession. FBI agents arrived at Madoff's luxurious Manhattan penthouse at dawn on December 11th. When asked if he knew why they were there, Madoff reportedly replied, "I guess there's no innocent explanation." With those words, the most devastating financial fraud in history began to unravel. In his plea allocution, Madoff admitted he had never made any legitimate investments with his clients' money during this time. Instead, he simply deposited the money into his personal business account at Chase Manhattan Bank. When his customers asked for withdrawals, he paid them out of that account. A classic robbing Peter to pay Paul scenario. The human cost. The true horror of Madoff's crime lies not in the astronomical numbers, but in the lives he destroyed. His victims spanned from celebrities to pension funds, from Holocaust survivors to charitable foundations. Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel lost $15.2 million from his foundation and his personal life savings of $12 million. "We thought he was God," Wiesel later said. "We trusted everything in his hands." Actors Kevin Bacon and Kira Sedgwick lost most of their savings. Though they recovered financially, Bacon reflected philosophically, "We got through it together. We were able to see all the things we had as opposed to whatever we lost." Not everyone could maintain such a perspective. René Thierry Magon de la Villouche, a French aristocrat and money manager who had invested $1.4 billion with Madoff, was found dead at his desk, a suicide, just days after the scheme collapsed. The ripple effect. The devastation extended beyond direct investors. Pension funds collapsed. Charities closed. And in perhaps the cruelest twist, some victims who had withdrawn more than they'd invested were sued to return those profits, money that had actually belonged to other victims. One elderly couple, believing they had $2.5 million for retirement, discovered not only that their money was gone, but that they now owed $425,000 because they had withdrawn more than they deposited. "We went from comfortable retirement to financial purgatory overnight," they said. Justice and aftermath. In March 2009, Madoff pleaded guilty to 11 federal crimes, including securities fraud, investment advisor fraud, mail fraud, wire fraud, and money laundering. He was sentenced to 150 years in prison, the maximum possible sentence. "I have left a legacy of shame to my family," Madoff told the court. "This is something I will live with for the rest of my life." The aftermath brought more tragedy. In 2010, on the second anniversary of his father's arrest, Mark Madoff hanged himself while his 2-year-old son slept in the next room. 4 years later, Andrew Madoff died of cancer. In 2022, Madoff's sister Sandra and her husband were found dead in what appeared to be a murder-suicide. Bernie's wife Ruth, ostracized and vilified, lives in obscurity, having lost her sons, her home, and her social standing. But how do you replace trust once it's gone? That may be Madoff's most devastating legacy. The lingering doubt that makes us question not just financial advisors, but each other. What are your thoughts on this? Could it have been prevented if the people took those red flags seriously? Drop down in the comments. In the end, Bernie Madoff wasn't just a thief who stole $65 billion. He was a betrayer who showed how vulnerable we all are to those we trust most. And perhaps that's the most frightening lesson of all. Make sure to subscribe for uncovering another scam story.